Hey guys, welcome back to my Practically Imperfect Life. Normally, I like to get out our kind of year-end recap and curriculum review to you much sooner than this, and usually before I do our reveal of the upcoming school year curriculum, but we've had a pretty busy spring and summer, lots of things going on, and lots of travel and graduation parties, and just all kinds of things. But I did want to take some time and just give you a little bit of a recap on what we thought of the different curriculum programs we used for last year. So last year, my oldest was a senior, and so it was her last year of school, and my son was a junior. And so all of this curriculum are things that they used for those years. I'm not going to deep dive too much into each individual one. I just want to highlight what we liked about it, what we didn't like about it, some things that I tweaked along the way, and maybe how I would approach it a little bit differently if I were to do it again. But all in all, we were pretty happy with the things that we chose for last year. I think everything worked out fairly well. We made a lot of changes in terms of like our pacing as the year went on, simply because life happens and you need to be able to be flexible and make some adjustments as you go through. But that's the beauty of homeschooling, is we can easily make those changes. We can adjust how much we're doing in a day, or when we're taking time off, or even like which pieces of the curriculum we are doing. But I'll start with my oldest, the things that she did. We did not have a whole lot of classes she was doing here in our homeschool because she's had pretty much everything done. She took a course that I wrote. She did practical life skills. She did Bible studies for me this year, and she did an anatomy and health course this year. Everything else she took were dual enrollment classes through a local college. So she took college level algebra because that was required for her degree. She took a writing and composition class, a literature class, and a psychology class. So she was able to get those 4 classes done, and she did do the accelerated version of these classes, which meant that each one was about 8 weeks long. So to briefly talk about dual enrollment, just a couple of things to kind of keep in mind if your student is doing a dual enrollment class. First of all, it is great when they offer accelerated classes. It's kind of nice to get some things done and out of the way, fit more classes in the year, that sort of thing. But you have to be very aware of how fast-paced those classes are going to be, and be willing to make other adjustments to accommodate the amount of work that they're going to need to get done in a short amount of time. And your student also has to understand that they are going to have to commit a good amount of time to working on things for those classes and hitting those deadlines. For the majority of her classes, assignments for the week wouldn't post until Sunday evening or sometimes Monday morning. And then she would have the assignments that are just due for that week. Very few of her classes told her what would be coming up in future weeks. So she couldn't really like work ahead on weeks where she was lighter on activities. She had to kind of do it as it came up. And I think that frustrated her a little bit because she had some days and some weeks where her schedule was light. Maybe she didn't have a bunch of basketball tournaments or a bunch of work hours. And so she would have loved to have the opportunity to kind of work ahead, but she didn't know what the assignments were going to be. And so she couldn't really do that, or at least she didn't have the details on the assignments to be able to work on them. The other thing that kind of frustrated her were discussion boards, which is something that just kind of happens with, college classes. They love to work in discussion boards. And oftentimes you have to do a post, and then you have to do a couple of replies. And the part that frustrated her wasn't having to do the original post. It was that so many of her classmates waited until the last minute to put their post up, that she had to wait until late on Sunday evenings to have anything to reply to. And she would have much rather, get that done during the week. So that was a bit of an annoyance for her, but she did great in those classes. It was just a local college, so it wasn't like a Christian school or anything like that. And so content, of course, was one thing that I was kind of worried about. What is it that they're going to have them read and write about, especially for the literature class and the writing class? And her writing class especially was very interesting. She showed me a lot of like the different selections they were given to read and write about. And we had a lot of talks about how to respond while upholding her values and her convictions. but do it in a respectful way. So that way she was writing and sharing her true thoughts and her true beliefs, but not doing it in a way that sounds like she's attacking, if that makes sense. So it's how to, I mean, it was really kind of like how to debate in your writing in a respectful way, which I think is a great skill to have because you want to be able to present your thoughts and ideas and have them well received. And she got an A in both her writing class and her literature class. So she obviously was successful in that. And I'm really proud of all of the work she put together and the papers that she wrote. She did a great job on it. And I think all of that work we had done in years prior using the IEW writing program really showed up. I mean, it really helped with what she was doing for those classes. The one class that I probably would not have had her do in an accelerated form if we could do it again was the math class. That is, even though she's taken through pre-calculus in our homeschool, and this was just an algebra class, it is a lot. It was a lot of math homework in a short amount of time. And they used an online, math program. So you did your homework and you submitted your answers online. And it kind of was reminiscent of all of the things that made us frustrated with the Shoreman math, where if something wasn't entered in an exact way, it was wrong. And so then you had to go back and figure out how it is you entered the correct answer, but not the exact way, like if there were spaces or if you didn't put a space between like the answer and the unit and all of these weird things. So that was not her favorite thing, but she's done. She only has to take one statistic class when she goes to college still, and at least the other math is out of the way. But I think having that spread out a little bit, maybe doing it as a semester-long course probably would have been a little bit easier for her. But for the majority of her classes, she was really able to get that work done and stay on pace. So those accelerated classes were great for that. So I would say just keep in mind your student and how it is your student handles that kind of pressure, having deadlines, having things that they're going to have to plan out themselves. Because I didn't plan any of this for her. I didn't say, okay, you need to work on this on these days for these amount of times. I wanted her to take some accountability for it and to learn to be independent in planning out her study schedule and her work schedule so she could be better prepared for future college classes. And so she did have to figure those things out, and she asked some questions, but she largely just used the skills we had already built over the years to help her with that. So really kind of look at your student and think about whether or not you think that that's the best thing for them. Now, as far as what she did here in our homeschool, one of the classes she did was an elective, and it was a biblical Hebrew course. So I'll show you a couple of the books from there and just talk about what we thought of that. All right, so I found this course kit through christianbook.com. And they have one actually for basics of biblical Greek, if that's something you're interested in. And that's something I might want to do in the future. But she was interested in biblical Hebrew because we have done so much in our Bible studies for the years. We had done 7 years of German studies, and I think she was just kind of ready to try something new. And we've been listening to a lot of podcasts together that focus a lot on Hebrew word study. So it was something that she was interested in. So this is kind of like the textbook. It's the grammar book. Nice book, good and solid. And then there was the workbook. Now, my son did this course too, so he actually had a workbook as well. So this is where you do a lot of practice, especially on writing in Hebrew, because obviously the letters are very different. And that was a huge challenge, like learning letters, learning how to write them, practicing it out. The other part is understanding kind of how these different letters come together, because it's not like English, where if I want to spell cat, I put C-A-T. It's more like word sounds coming together. And then there are different types of endings to learn, and different ways that the words have to form together or be ordered to make it make sense. So it's definitely a challenging course. It is a challenging course, but one that's well worthwhile. We also got access to downloads. So there were video downloads that introduced and gave good explanation on each of the chapters. We only got through about 8 chapters in this year. We went through it really slow. And I would love to continue just self-study through the rest of it. We're not going to do a foreign language with my son next year. He was like, I'm good. 1 year's enough. but I would personally love to finish going through this. And I feel like it does walk you through it really well. I would definitely say this is better for an older student. Like I wouldn't have tried to do this with them in like middle school. I think it's a difficult language, and so it's one that just worked out better for us to do when they were older. They had a lot of optional little extras you could get, which I did get. There was like a course guide. This was nice for me because it kind of takes you through what it is each chapter is about, gives you some ideas on how to pace yourself through it. I have a little compact guide, so again, just like little highlights of things. So kind of takes like the main ideas from the textbook. And then we got these vocabulary cards. These were nice because you can, just like with their German flashcards, you can sit there and flip through them. So it has the Hebrew on one side, and on the back side, it has the definition, what it means, and then it actually gives you some key information, like how often it appears in the Old Testament, where in the textbook or the grammar book you can kind of go back and find it. But just good practice there. So we utilized all of these components. We watched the videos when we were starting a lesson, and then they would be assigned some pages to read in the textbook, and then they would have a couple of days to do the practices. Some of the videos were quite long. Some of them were like 30, 40 minutes long. So on those longer ones, I'd actually break it up. I'd say, hey, watch the first 20 minutes today, watch the next 20 minutes the next time. And we would work on this 2 or 3 days a week. So like I said, we worked through it really slowly, but I would rather work through it slowly and get a decent understanding than try to speed through it and not remember anything at all. But that was her one elective. Her other elective was Bible study. And we have done this traditionally as a family, like we've sat down and we've done our Bible studies all together. This year, the kids did individual Bible study books, and all of our books came from Daily Grace Co., with the exception of one. This is God's Plan Unfolds, the Church from Nazareth to Nicaea. This was from Concordia Publishing House. It's a Lutheran study that talks through how, well, the early church formed. So each day that we worked on this, they would be given an assignment to read. So they would, I grabbed the teacher's guide, not the student guide. Anyways, well, the student guides would have a couple of pages to go with each lesson. And so they'd be assigned to read those. There were usually scripture passages that they would have to look up. And then they had a notebook where they answered the questions that were posed in the student book, and they wrote them down. And I would go through those, not necessarily to say, okay, you got this right, you got this wrong, but to make sure that they were reading it and kind of see where they were at with their thought processes on that. And then for our Bible studies, I didn't grab all of the ones we did, but I grabbed a few. Like we did Fighting with Faith, a study in the book of Philippians. We got both the men's version and the women's version of this. So my son did one version and my daughter did the other. And then she did I Am, Who Jesus Is Changes Everything. We did a number of those. The kids liked doing this way because they could work on it at any point in the day, wherever they were at with their study. If they wanted to pull this out and do this part, they could work on their own pace, even though I kind of told them, I said, let's do one a day. So that's mostly what they did. But some days, they would double up and do more than one. And if they were having a busy day, they might have to skip a day and come back to it. But they completed 3. No, we completed 4. We completed 4 of these over the course of the year. So these will vary from 4-week-long to 6-week-long studies. You can throw in, like we usually throw in our Advent study. So we kind of interrupt wherever we're at with these. We do the Advent study and we go back. We did not do a Lent study this year, and I just didn't get it ordered in time. That's really kind of what it came down to. But normally we would also kind of interrupt wherever we're at in a book, and we would do a Lent study and then come back. So those were the electives that she did. Now the other course she did for me, I only took her the first half of the year, and that was the life skills course, the practical life skills course. That's the one that I wrote. That's available down in my shop if you want to check that out. I'm not going to go into too many details because I did a whole video about it. So you can go back and see that if you would like to know more about that course and what is included in it. But basically, it was a combination of reading material that I wrote, and then reading excerpts from different books, watching some videos, and doing a lot of hands-on activities around the house. So that was great because she's going to have her first apartment this coming August when we move her down for college. So she now knows how to, do all kinds of stuff, from tackling plumbing issues to doing different types of cleaning, uh, creating a budget, what to do if a fuse, blows in your house, how to fix that, how to just handle different things around the house. Has a better understanding of her taxes. She's had a job for the last 2 years, but this year she kind of handled getting all of her tax materials around herself, getting them over to the person who does our taxes for us. She's gotten much better at handling different types of paperwork, understanding bank accounts. She really took this information to heart, which is great. So that was super helpful for her. It was a fun course for us to do. It was kind of nice to see something that I put together kind of play out and how it all worked. And I was glad to see that it worked well for my kids. And then anatomy. So she did Guest Hollow's anatomy and health course. So we did the high school version of this. So I've talked about Guest Hollow courses a lot, and this is another one of those where it's very much literature based. Lots of great books to read over the course of the year, videos to watch if you choose to do those, activities you can do and experiments. There's even dissection and microscope work and all of those different things. She wanted to focus more on the reading video side of things this year. So while we had some of the activities, largely she kind of did what I said were the things that were portable, and it's just because of her schedule. She worked more than one job. She had basketball going on. She had golf going on. She had to do some physical therapy after she had a shoulder injury. I mean, she just wanted to be able to pick up the things that she needed to work on and take them with her wherever she was going. So if she was at work, she could have stuff that she could do during her breaks. If she was heading out somewhere, she'd have something to work on a car ride. So while we did some of the activities that are included in the schedule, we largely focused on the books and the videos. And I was trying to be, thoughtful in which videos I selected. I didn't want to do too many on the same subject. So I tried to really look through the videos and just pick out the ones that I thought would give the best amount of information within that video. There are some really great options on that schedule for you to check through. Overall, I think what you choose as far as books and activities will determine whether I would look at this more as a full-on anatomy course or a full-on health course. There's a lot of information in this course that I've seen more in health curriculums, talking about, effects of alcohol and drugs, making just good choices. There's a huge section at the end about making good choices in relationships, which I think is actually really great. Information on warning signs to look out for a toxic relationship and being safe in your relationships. There is information that you might want to think about whether or not you want to include when you're starting to talk about abstinence and making those kind of decisions, and the consequences that can happen if you make poor choices in that area of your life. So some people might not want to include that part for their kids, and some might want to. I left it all in because my kids have grown up with mom who's a nurse, and I don't use foo-foo words for anything, right? I tell them how it is. And I make sure that they have a good understanding that making poor choices in different areas of life have a lot of consequences that can happen. So you might want to decide what you'd want to include or not include for your kid. But as far as the anatomy side of it, it's a really interesting, the level of understanding you can gain from reading focused books on different things. When you're reading a book that is all about your digestive system, you can start to get into a lot more detail than you can in one chapter of a traditional textbook that is just okay, here's the pieces, and okay, here's what they do. And you take in all of that information and then you just promptly forget it all after the test. Whereas if you're reading a book like The Adventures of the Alimentary Canal, Gulp, which is one of the books she read, I mean, it really just I don't know, like sticks with you a lot more. And there's a lot of little bits of interesting information that you wouldn't have otherwise found in a traditional textbook. So we really enjoyed reading through a lot of these books and just getting a better understanding of how things work and how things are connected. Um, the bigger focus of this course for this year was not her memorizing things. It was getting familiarity with them and how they work and starting to have that information. So when she takes a college level anatomy and physiology class, it's not all brand new material. She will have seen it all at least once, and she will probably have a pretty thorough understanding on how a lot of things work. So let me pull up a couple of books and things. I've got stacks of stuff all over me. So I mentioned this book. One of the really interesting books was Dead Men Do Tell Tales. This was pretty fun. This kind of reminds me when we did, oh, which course was it? I think it was World History or Geography and Cultures. One of our history courses from Guest Hollow reread a book that talked about, shoot, I can't remember the name of it now. I'll pop a picture up if I remember the name. But it was all about how different cultures handled death and grief and things like that. And it was a really fascinating book. And it kind of reminds me of that because not everybody really wants to read about forensic science, but it's pretty interesting stuff. So we quite enjoyed that book. Another one that was kind of thought-provoking was Brain Rules. So this is Brain Rules, 12 Principles for Surviving and Thriving at Work, Home, and School. So just to give you the synopsis, it says, how do we learn? What do sleep and stress do to our brains? Why is multitasking a myth? Why is it so easy to forget and important to repeat new knowledge? Is it true men and women have different brains? So it's just kind of a focus book on brain science. And the human brain is fascinating. Like, it is incredible when you think about the number of connections and neurons and things happening in our brains and the way it develops from the time we are born to through adulthood. There's so much that we don't know about the brain, but this is a pretty interesting little book. So one to consider on there. Kind of I would say like the core book, I guess, was Anatomy and Physiology Made Incredibly Easy. So this is one of those, I don't know, it kind of reminds me of those books for dummies, right? Where it's a lot of basic information. This was a used copy that I got, and it was like, it was in okay shape. But this is where you kind of got some initial information on the different components. There are like little quizzes included in here if you wanted to do them. I didn't assign them, but I told her, I said, well, if you want to quiz yourself, go for it. One thing that I'm so glad that we did, this was an added suggestion. I think they added it in, trying to find a good one. After I had initially purchased the curriculum, I think Jennifer Guest had done like an update and she'd recommended this. This is Netter's Anatomy Coloring Book. This is such a cool book. So there's these images, right, of all of these different parts of the body. And my daughter colored these in, but you see they're labeled. And then there's the informational page. So you read about things over here and then you color it. And it reminds me of kind of like doing doodle notes. For those who aren't familiar with that, it's the idea that when you are like listening to a lecture or taking notes, you draw like pictures and images and things like that because you're using the different halves of your brain. You're listening, you're looking, you're drawing, you're writing, and so it helps you to retain the information. So it kind of reminds me of doing that. But this was really fun. So she could go through, and I mean, it's incredibly detailed. Now, there was no way she was going to memorize all of this year, right? Sorry, I'm trying to get it so it'll show. Like, there was no way. But that wasn't the goal. The goal was not for me to have her memorize. Like, I could have written like quizzes and stuff like that and done it that way. But instead, what I wanted her to do was to start to get familiar with all of these things. So she is such a great little artist. So she was really doing that, that and working hard on it. The other thing that I had her do was keep a narration journal. And I have used these in the past with Guest Hollow courses. She did one for botany. She did one for history and things like that. Again, there's no like set thing that I'm looking for her to do with this. I just want her to write down the things that stuck it out to her for that day, and the things that she might have further questions about, or draw pictures and write notes on things she's learned. So I did not require her to fill this out every single day. I just asked her a couple times a week to write an entry about the things that she was learning. And so she did a lot of like a lot of little sketches. So like she did like this one when she was studying the eye, and then she wrote in some notes on things that she thought were interesting. So I think that's cool. It's neat to go back and read it and see what things stuck out to her the most. So we quite enjoyed the class. If you have to do tests or quizzes or provide examples of graded work for your state, you will probably want to, use the quizzes that are in that anatomy and physiology, Made Incredibly Easy. And I want to say there were links to some activities like worksheets and things like that in the curriculum that if you wanted to, you could use those for grades. And then I always give like a credit grade for these, but there's not a workbook for this one. There's not an online textbook or anything like that. So it's a little more of like a self-paced, learning, going through the books and the videos. But it's a really solid introduction to things. If you're not going to go into the sciences or into healthcare and you don't have to have an in-depth class, this would be a really nice way to have a good understanding or a good introduction to your body and how it works, and some ideas on what to do for health. You could definitely give credit for anatomy, and you could give credit for health. You could do it either way. Like I would say like a half a year credit for health class, and then you could give like a full year anatomy credit, just based on like how much material comes from the different subjects. But it's a really good introduction to it, and it felt very different from a traditional health course, which she had done a traditional health course back in like 8th grade, and so I think she enjoyed this a lot more. All right, switching over to my son. So elective wise, we've already talked about Hebrew and Bible and the practical life skills. So he did the same electives as his sister, but then we had a number of other courses that he was doing. For science, we did physics, and we did the same physics course that my daughter had done the year prior. So instead of talking about that here, I will refer you back to my review video that I posted up at the end of last year, where I really did deep dive into our science classes, including that one, because quite honestly, it was exactly the same, and my thoughts on it are exactly the same. We liked it. It worked well. It's physics. I don't know. But you can go back and you can check out that video if you want a lot of details on it, but it was one that worked just fine. One of our big changes this year, and I had talked about this a lot in my curriculum choice videos last year, was that we did not purchase a literature curriculum for my son to do. Instead, what I did is I looked through the recommended books, like extra novels in our history course, along with kind of a list of classic novels that I had been collecting on books that I thought would be great reads. And I had him read full books, and then I had purchased some different guides from Teacher Pay Teachers. So some of the books that we read, and I don't have them all here, but we read The Crucible, we read The Scarlet Letter, The Last and the Mohicans, Common Sense by Thomas Paine. We read White Fang, Uncle Tom's Cabin, Uncle Tom's Cabin. We read Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn, and Copper Sun. We were going to do the Children's Blizzard, and we left that one out, and we were going to do a poetry unit, and we left that out. So those were things that I had kind of on the docket, but we just didn't get to it. A mix of some newer books and some classic books, right? Because like Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn, classics, right? Uncle Tom's Cabin, classic. Last of the Mohicans, I love this book. I can't believe I hadn't read this in, I think it had been like 20 years since I read it, but it was really good. We read the autobiography of Ben Franklin. That is such a fun little short read, and it's short. It's like this big. He is such a humorous writer. You should read it. even if you're not doing it in your homeschool, it's a fun read, and it's fascinating. His life was fascinating. You should definitely do it. I got, this is a combo version. It's got Call of the Wild and White Fang. We had done Call of the Wild as a read out loud when they were in middle school, and it was a really, really good book. So this is a fantastic collection. I think we liked all of the books. I don't think there was a book where we were like, well, I don't care for that. They just all have, you know, different modes of writing and different focuses. So it was kind of nice to see a lot of different authors. Common Sense, okay, Common Sense. I think this is probably it's the shortest book, but I think it's the one where he was like, oh, this old school language is like hard, you know. I mean, the writing's just different. But Copper Sun, and I've talked about this a couple of times. Oh my gosh, it's such a good book. But it is incredibly difficult in terms of themes and how, I mean, like, they don't mince words. They tell you all of the horrors that were occurring in this time period. It follows a girl from the time she was kidnapped from her village in Africa to a time she escaped from slavery. So it does not mince words. It's a very hard read in that regard, but it's a really good book. I kind of want to look and see if Sharon Draper wrote anything else. So I love that we read all full books. Let me set these down. I love that we did that. I had been, that was one of the things that just bugged me about past curriculum. Like, I love the way BJU presented like literary devices and things like that, and I love the resources, but you were reading all of these little excerpts from all of these different books, and, you know, lots of poems, which I can't stand poetry. My kids can't stand poetry either, and lots of short stories, but I wanted them to read more full novels, and I was constantly having to change the pacing of the curriculum to fit in full novels, and I was like, we just got to read books. Now, I had gone through and I'd bought all of these literature guides from Teacher Pay Teachers, bunch of different ones, and quite honestly, like, there's not that much difference from one publisher on Teacher Pay Teachers to another. They almost all had the same format. There would be questions to go with each chapter. There might be quizzes and tests you could do, and then they would have kind of the same like literary device worksheets one after another. There'd be something on characterization, conflict, plot structure, understanding different things like metaphors and similes and personification and whatnot. So while it was nice to have questions to go along with each chapter, I don't really feel like it was 100% necessary to have all of those literature guides. I think if I could go back again, I would probably have maybe bought like one to give myself some like worksheet frameworks, and then maybe create my own worksheets for some of the different literary devices. And then instead of having like multiple worksheets, and I even started to kind of filter this out as we went through the year, instead of saying, okay, for this book, you're going to do a characterization worksheet and a plot structure worksheet and a conflict worksheet, pick one literary device to really focus on while you're working on that novel, or like one or two, right? Like, so let's talk about mood and themes when we're talking about this, or maybe we're going to talk about the theme in each novel, but this one we're going to talk about theme and we're going to look at plot structure and really understand that, or we're going to look at the theme and how to identify different conflicts in it, or we're going to look at theme and let's look at word usage and how they created metaphors and similes and personification. So that way it's a little more focused with each novel, and kind of simplifying what it is that the student really needs to focus on, and making sure they're really mastering that literary device and identifying that literary device in a novel instead of looking for a whole bunch of things. I think that would probably have been a little more helpful, and it's definitely the approach I will take next year, because we're going to do novels again for our literature class. The guided questions, like I said, they're nice for just checking that your student is actually doing the reading. But I think there's probably plenty of resources out there where you can get like chapter quizzes and stuff like that, and maybe just do like a chapter quiz every couple of chapters you assign them, just to make sure that they've done the reading. And then do those extra activities to help them focus in on the literary devices. I did start to go through and show him how to do annotation and how to make all kinds of notes within your book. This was something that was helpful for the literature class that my daughter took. So she took excellence in literature when she did her high school lit classes, which was reading like these really difficult collection of books. She had a huge reading list and big books. And so she had to do a lot of note taking within the books. And there is a process to doing that. So I worked on teaching that this year, and we'll keep using that same process next year with the books. So as opposed to having like all of these different questions to have him fill out from day to day, which kind of started to feel like busy work, I'm going to focus more on having him do annotation in the book and finding certain things that I want him to find. And that's how I'm going to check that he's done the reading, is I will just look through his book and see what has he marked, what has he highlighted, what questions has he written, what vocabulary words has he defined, and then we'll do a few focus studies on lit devices, and then a paper. So we did do some paper writing for some of these. Some of these it was writing a paper, some of it was a test at the end. It just kind of depended on the book. But I think that's how I will tweak that. And I knew there were going to be some things I wanted to change because it was kind of the first year where we had just abandoned a traditional literature curriculum. But to give you an idea, this was his binder, and these were all of the different pages from the teacher packets. I mean, that's kind of ridiculous, isn't it, to print all that out and have him fill all of that out? So I think it'll just be better for us to take a slightly different approach to how we do those. Now, along with that, for his English grade, he did Easy Grammar Level 11. Totally fine, good review. I think I've said this a couple times. I would not use this to teach grammar for the first time around. I really liked how we taught it with Fix-It Grammar. However, it is really nice for review. And he's going to do the Level 12 next year as well. And then writing. So we started the year and he did the essay course from IEW, and I could not find the book anywhere. I don't know. We've started cleaning up stuff here in the basement, but I'll try to throw a picture up of it. I'll tell you what, if you've never done IEW and you have a student who's in high school or maybe even middle school, and you want to see kind of what you think of IEW without maybe buying the whole big structure and style course, this is a great book to get. It is an introduction to writing a good quality essay, which every high schooler should know how to write a good quality essay. Like, it's just a skill you should have. Being able to put your words and thoughts together in a way that makes sense and is well presented and well written is important. So this takes you through the whole process, writing your introduction and your body paragraphs and your conclusion. For him, it was good review of the things he had previously done, but I wanted to focus on it more because I knew I was going to be assigning more and more papers to go with these novel studies. And so I really wanted to spend extra time, focus time at the beginning of the year on that. So I'm glad we did it. Really great. You could get this done in, half the year or less. Like, this could be a 1 semester or even a 1 quarter course, but it's really nice for getting your students ready for essay writing. And then after that, we switched over to advanced U.S. history-based writing lessons, a little bit bigger book. This one we had done with my daughter, can't remember what year, her sophomore year. She had taken U.S. history, I think, her sophomore year, and so we did this at the same time. Since he was studying U.S. history this year, we thought, well, we'll do this one. We did not get through this whole book, not by a long shot. So he will actually be finishing this up this coming year, and that'll be kind of the last of his writing courses. But it is a nice theme-based study. There are some really interesting little passages for him to read, and it does kind of go, I'd say mostly it feels like it goes chronologically. Like, he was reading about, like you read about like the Mayflower, the Constitution, Civil War, Uncle Tom's Cabin, World War I. Like, it kind of goes through chronologically. So you could definitely work this in. This would be really great if you're doing U.S. history with your high schooler. Just kind of keep the theme going with everything. So that was his English course. We did not have... No, I think that's it. I think that's everything for the English course. For math, we went back to Saxon, and I'm so glad. I'm so glad. He did advanced mathematics from Saxon. This is kind of like a pre-calculus course, basically. And we subscribed to Nicole the Math Lady for the school year. And that was a good choice, I think. He would watch lesson videos, and then he would read the lesson in the textbook and do the problems. We didn't do like any of the extras. We literally just subscribed to like her lessons. So he was just watching her kind of teach it. Uh, they have a lot of optional services. I think you can have like online grading and all of this other stuff and tutoring, and so there's lots of great options if you need them. I feel like she's a really good teacher. It's kind of interesting because like Sherman tries to be very high techy, like here's this whiteboard and we're gonna draw all this stuff out here and look at this. And she's a teacher in front of a whiteboard and she's writing things out. But there is kind of a beauty in that simplicity because she's, making eye contact with the with the camera. So it feels like she's talking right to you. And she's writing out these concepts, and you can kind of feel her passion for math through the screen. So I really appreciated that. I thought that that was good. Another reason why I'm really glad to have gone back to this is because along with the textbook, I have the solution manual. The Saxon solution manuals are fantastic because it's not just here's the answer. It's here's like the full workout of the problem, every step. So if your student gets stuck, you can find where in all of these steps they got stuck and you can give them some guidance. It's not just, oh, well, you got the answer wrong, it's wrong. And they go, well, why? And you go, I don't know. You can actually go back through and see where it is they went off track and you can help them. We also, of course, we love the fact that Saxon does spiral review. So each time there's a lesson, there's a little bit of information. And out of all of the problems in a day's assignment, like 5, 6 will be the new material. And all of the rest are pulled from previous lessons. So you're constantly pulling that information forward and practicing it. And it's mastery here. Let's get really good at this by repetition, by doing it over and over again, which is important in math because math concepts, they build on each other and they flow together. And you have to understand this material you learned at the start of the year to have any hope of understanding the material that's coming at the end of the year. So we like that. I would recommend if you do Saxon, your student will growl at you a little bit, but yes, 30 problems per lesson. Do all 30 problems. Otherwise, you are going to have to sort through and see which problems come from which lessons and make sure that you're doing all the review. On each problem, it tells you which lesson that problem came from. So that way, if they're stuck, they can go back to that. But I mean, if you just assign all 30, then you don't have to fiddle with that for each and every lesson. And it's good practice. You could always adjust your pacing too, because it's not like there's 180 lessons here. I want to say it was like 120 lessons plus the tests. So, if your students spent an hour on math, you could have them pause and come back to it the next day. You really could, and break it up that way. You could set a time limit for math each day. Mine just kind of got it done. Some days it took them an hour, some days it took them longer. But when you get into higher level math, guys, there's no rushing this. I'm sorry, but unless you're a math genius, you're not going to get pre-calculus, a lesson, and reading and homework done in 30 minutes. Like, you're just not. You got to put some extra time into it. And that's something to understand too, is as you move into some of these higher level courses, our school day, we're not getting done in 3 or 4 hours. There's extra time that these classes take, but we expect that, right? Because they're taking higher level courses. So it does take some time, but we were really glad that we made the switch back to this. Now, he is doing consumer math next year because he does not need anything higher than pre-calculus. And we had talked a little bit about whether or not we should have him do a dual enrollment math class, but he is looking at trade school. So it's kind of like, well, why would we pay for a college credit if we're not going that route? But the consumer math course, I think, will be an interesting one for us to do this coming year. All right, so we did his science, his literature, his history. History. Okay. if you know me at all, you know we love our guest hollow history courses. Like I have not seen a history course from them that I have not loved. So he's done geography and cultures and world history. So this year we decided to do year 1 of the US history. So Guest Hollow has split US history into early American history and modern American history. So it kind of right about like the 1900s, 1920s, right, is where that split is. So we were studying from like the discovery of the Americas up till early 1900s. And again, similar to like the anatomy course my daughter did from Guest Hollow, there is a lot of reading, lots and lots of great books, videos, hands-on activities, and this one did have a workbook. So I did print and spiral bound the workbook. I did not grab that to show you, but it's a workbook. But lots of great questions and pictures and things like that within there. Very nice for him to be able to kind of fill out as we go along. Book-wise, there is no online textbook for this. The Patriots History of the United States was our spine book. So he would have little reading selections in here. And again, it just kind of, it goes chronologically, right? So I would just tell him what like subtopic he was reading, and he would bookmark it as he would go through. Obviously, this is a really fat book. It's a really big read. But this actually will be used, I think this is used again next year for our modern American history class. Another great book to have, this is the United States Constitution, a graphic adaptation. He's really gotten into these graphic novels. So there were a number of books, like the Guts and Glory books and things like that, that are graphic novels that are listed on the book list. And I got all of them because I thought, why not get a nice collection of them? But just this was a little bit of a, I don't know, cool way to read the Constitution. Now I have a more traditional one that I have for the government econ course that he'll be doing. Another book that I don't know if it was his favorite book, but I certainly enjoyed reading it. We read Bill O'Reilly's Killing England, The Struggle for American Independence. These Bill O'Reilly series, these are good reads. So because I read everything that he read, so I thought that this was fun. But good solid course, lots and lots of great books. Like I'm so glad that I splurged and got the majority of the books, because even if we didn't read all of them, it was really nice to kind of flip through and get bits of information from different things. Same idea with the videos, is that I was thoughtful about which videos I assigned. I tried not to assign any more than 2 videos a day and only 1 video on a topic. So if there were 2 or 3 different videos that all talked about a particular battle, I would kind of go through and pick one. Especially if there were a series of videos on different days that were maybe from like the same producer, so that way it kind of flowed together. Lots of great crash course videos and things like that. So that was good. It was good to kind of go through and make sure that it wasn't too much or too overwhelming or anything like that. And then there were a number of different times where there were like worksheets or activities that were linked, and I wouldn't pick one for every single day, but about 1 a week I would pick for us to do. Again, his schedule got really busy because he was working and had sports and everything. And so, it wasn't like a lot of, oh, let's build this and let's cook this and all of that stuff. Like when he was a little younger, he was really into those things. And so we just have to be more mindful of kind of where his interests lie. So we were definitely book heavy this year versus activity heavy, but we tried to include a little bit of everything. This is the spine book. I definitely miss the fact that this course doesn't have an online textbook, but I understand that writing those online textbooks is incredibly time consuming. We had the one for the geography and cultures class, and then for world history, and those online textbooks are phenomenal. Great information, embedded videos. I mean, the reading level's spot on. Like those are wonderfully done. I wish there was one for the high school class, but I understand that it's a lot of work to write it. However, I recently was given a preview of the Modern American History textbook that they wrote for like the junior level. So right now, so this is the high school level course, right? And then they have like a junior level and like the little kids. So you could family style it, right? You can have your high schoolers and then your middle grades and then your younger kids kind of all studying the same time period in US history, just at their levels. Um, and the textbook for the year one, for like the middle grade levels, was really well received by a lot of people. A lot of people chose to get it printed and bound, and it's beautiful, beautiful textbook. So they have released, or they're going to be releasing the younger version of the modern American history. So American History Year 2, which we're doing next year. And I've got a chance to preview the textbook, and it's really cool. And they've actually found resources now for us. If you you get it as a download, like a PDF download, but if you wanted to get it printed, they've got a connection for you to be able to go and get it printed. And I think I'm going to go ahead and do that. I think I'm going to go ahead and order it. Because they said it can work with the high school curriculum, but it's not supposed to be like a substitute for like, everything else that you're doing. So I think what we'll do is we'll still use this, because this is definitely information at that high school level. Like this is good reading level for him. It's got a good amount of information. It's just, it's a little ho-hum simply because it's like a whole bunch of words. And when you're a boy who really enjoys learning things visually, that can be hard. So I think combining that along with the textbook would be nice. Plus, I just really want to have it. So that is the one thing that I will change, is I think I'm going to get that and include that along with everything else we're doing at the high school level. But really nice in-depth look at American history. A lot of people ask like what kind of approach history courses take, because I know that people want to stay away from curriculum that I think goes too far one way or the other. Like, there's curriculum that makes America seem like it's just awful. And then there's curriculum that's like, we're the best ever, we've never done anything wrong. And reality lies somewhere in the middle, right? Like we, as a nation, we have been blessed and we have been guided by God to do a lot of really amazing things. I mean, we are extremely fortunate to live where we live, and we have really, I think, benefited the world in a lot of ways through our leadership. Are there things in our history, though, that are poor? Absolutely, right? I mean, slavery, awful. Internment camps during World War II, awful. The way that we treated a lot of different people groups over the years, awful. Like we have got some Mars on our history, right? But part of history is learning those things and identifying like what was going on at the time and what things were good, what things were bad, and having that in our minds so we don't repeat the mistakes of the past and we make great choices in the future, right? So you can't erase history, good or bad. You have to acknowledge both, and you have to really understand both. So that long spiel to say that this presents history, I think, in as neutral of a way as you can. Some of these books are, some of the book choices are going to lean one way or the other, because that's what authors do, right? They're intending to get you to think one way or the other. So yes, are some books going to lean one way or the other? Yes. However, there is a good balance of kind of presenting material, I think, that has different perspectives, if that makes sense. And so it allows you to then, as a family, have some really great discussions. And you should have discussions with your kids about history. What did you think about this? What did you identify as like the reasoning behind this? Why did people do that? What was their motivation? Like, you should be having these conversations with your kids. It's a great part about learning history, is that you should talk about it as you're learning it. So if that helps anybody who's wondering, it is not a curriculum that leans one way or the other. It just says, this is history. This is what happened. Now talk about it and come up with some conclusions based on the information that's been presented. And I think that's important. I think that at a high school level, your kids should be able to do that. They should be not just memorizing facts and figures and dates, but they should be talking through causes and effects and motivations and repercussions and all of those things. Like that's a big part of history. Okay. I think his electronics course is the last one. And if I'm forgetting anything, drop a comment, let me know questions that you have, because I literally just went over to their desks and I grabbed what I could to bring over here, because we recently just got our basement back after another round of flooding. So it's a little chaos here in the homeschool room. Anywho's, last and final course, my son did an electronics elective, and this was one that I picked up while I was at the homeschool convention last year. It's from Applied Inspirations. It was a 2-part course. So I picked up part 1, which is basic electronics, and part 2, LED array oscilloscope. So this is an introduction to electronics where, well, basically that's what he built, the picture that you see on there. Those are what he made. I had to purchase like a toolkit, like the things he would need. It was very expensive. It was pricey. And I told him that at the beginning. I was like, I mean, we're talking a few $100s for this course and the materials. And I was like, I need you to take this seriously. I need you to treat these materials with respect. Please don't burn down my house. Please don't give yourself a 3rd-degree burn, and really try to learn this, because he's talked about things that he's interested in going into, and this seemed like a good practical hands-on thing for him to do. There was a USB that had like the book, I guess you call it. So this is what I printed out. This is the kind of textbook that goes along with it. Lots and lots of pictures. So glad that I have an EcoTake printer, but it was really good. He said it started off really hard because it was all new information to him, and I was absolutely no help. I know nothing about electronics, like nothing. So I couldn't help him in the slightest. But after reading and rereading a couple of times and then really looking at things closely, he finally started to get the gist of it. And then once you do that, then you can start to move through it at a little bit of a quicker pace. It would have been really nice if I had somebody in our life who had some background in this, to where I could say, hey, he's working on this. Can he call you if he has a question? That sort of thing. But it was fun. I think it was the right amount of challenge for him, because you can't rush through it. You have to take your time. You have to make sure you're doing each step right, because if you don't, then the whole thing's not going to work. And so it taught him patience, and it taught him attention to detail, but then it also taught a lot about basic electronics. So it, again, Applied Inspirations, if you have a student who's interested in electronics, definitely, again, I would say this is older student. Like, I would not do this with like a middle schooler or maybe even like a freshman. I definitely upper high school, I think, is really where I felt like it was most appropriate. Now, you might have a kid who's like much more into that stuff and can handle it. I would not have given this to my son any earlier than I did. I needed him to be mature enough not to burn my house down, because there's like soldering tools and all of that stuff. And yeah, I needed us to be safe. Anyways, interesting course though, and a really, really good bit of information. When I had asked the owner, kind of, how would you describe this course to someone, he told me if you finish both parts, you essentially have the skills that somebody would have learned in like an intro electronics course that they would do in college. He's like, you could go in and do like some entry-level electronics work. Okay. So that was his last elective. All right. And I think that's all of the curriculum that we used last year. Hopefully I'm not forgetting anything, but if you saw something that seemed glaringly absent, you can ask a question in the comments, and I'll try to respond to that. If you have any more specific questions about any of the stuff that we used, like I said, please feel free to drop a comment down below, or you can shoot an email. My email is always listed down in the description box for you. But all in all, it was a good year. There wasn't anything that we did where I was like, boy, I regret that purchase. It was literally just tweaking things like our approach to stuff. And that's, again, part of homeschooling, is that you make adjustments based on what has worked and not worked in the past. But I feel really good kind of going into my son's senior year with like this final year of choices and the way that we're going to approach some different subjects. Um, Anyways, if you found this video helpful, please give it a like. If you are new here to my channel, hit subscribe so you can follow along with our homeschooling through high school journey. As always, thank you guys so much for being here, and I'll see you in the next one. Till then, happy homeschooling.